Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the annual reorganization meeting of the Tuxedo Park Board of Trustees. Clerk Doherty, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor Citrin.
Present.
Trustee Brooke. Oh, for the record, he's absent. Trustee Kasker. Or should I say Mayor Kasker? Sorry.
Here.
Trustee Shara.
Present.
And Trustee Shaw.
Present.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we begin the substance of the meeting, as we will at every Board of Trustees meeting from this point on, I will give some opening remarks, and then I will permit the trustees to speak about whatever subject they believe is appropriate. It's been 2 weeks since I assumed the office of mayor, and I just want to report to the community that I've been very busy here in Village Hall. I've been meeting with the various department heads. I've taken several phone calls from residents who have concerns about infrastructure and other items. I've gone out personally to observe the condition and worked with either Jeff Voss or John Ledwith to ameliorate the problems. I've got meetings scheduled with various contract vendors, whether it's the sanitation department, the Sterling Carting, the garbage company, our village engineers. I've met with our village attorneys, and I want to report that the state of the village is good. I will continue to work hard on behalf of all the residents, and I appreciate the trust that you placed in me in giving me the privilege of this position. Before I go any further, I would like to recognize in the audience, even though you can't see him on the Zoom, is Mayor David McFadden, who has graced us with his presence tonight. I give him a round of applause for his service. I know you will all do so on the Zoom call. Tonight is the reorganization, which is done on an annual basis after the election takes place. As we all know, this year, the election lasted much longer than we expected. Ordinarily, the reorganization takes place in July following the June election. This year, with the litigation that took place in court, it wasn't until September that the election was decided. However, the reorganization is the responsibility of the mayor and the Board of Trustees, so we're here tonight to perform that specific duty. Before we begin, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the changes I've proposed in the reorganization plan. Every year, it is the duty of the mayor to present the trustees with a reorganization plan. I view the trustees and their role in this village very similar to the United States Senate. It is my duty as the mayor to nominate for various positions on boards, and I believe that it is the duty of the trustees to provide advice and consent. In the past, the trustees have not always had the opportunity to fully vet the applicants for positions or the candidates for office. But from this point on, the trustees will have the opportunity, by way of interviews, to learn about the background of the people I nominate for positions. And then once they've concluded their interviews, they will have the opportunity to vote to approve or at their discretion to disapprove my nominations. I believe it is a fair process. I believe it is an open process, and one that one would say 5 heads are better than one. So rather than rely on me, I look to the trustees for advice and consent, and I'm sure that I will get it. With respect to another major issue, the trustees probably already know, ordinarily at the beginning of each year, the Board of Trustees acts as the assessing unit to determine what changes, if any, will be made with respect to the real property assessments for individual lots in the village. I'm going to open a discussion at the October regular meeting with the trustees to discuss the possibilities of removing the Board of Trustees as the assessing unit and replace it with some other option. So if you look for the agenda on the October 18th meeting, that will probably be the number one item, and it is an important item. And I have learned that as far back as 2007, when Mayor McFadden was on the board, there were discussions concerning this. So 16 years later, we're going to tackle it again, and hopefully we'll be able to take the politics out of assessments, and we'll be able to make the system more fair and more equitable. As the mayor, I've set up a set of advisory committees within the office of the mayor. And tonight I am asking people who are interested in serving the village to volunteer their time and their efforts on these committees. The committees are as follows. There will be a budget committee, which will examine the village budget during the course of the year. There will be a finance committee, which will have to make recommendations with respect to any bonding we may have to do to deal with the problems we have with our sewer and water systems. There will also be a contract review committee. My understanding is, although I'm still exploring the files, is there's well over 30 independent contracts we have with various vendors to provide services. And I'd like that particular committee to examine those contracts. They will be coming up for renewal, and we'd like to make sure that the contracts are carried out in full and receive the best possible service for the taxpayer money. So if anybody out there is listening, I'm more than happy to discuss a place for you on one of those committees. Finally, last Thursday, I had my first Meet the Mayor night. 7:30, I arrived. I sat quietly here at the desk, and I sat here alone for about 90 minutes. So I am asking anyone who wishes to meet with me in person to come to Village Hall to discuss any problems they would like to bring to my attention. I will be here again on Thursday at 7:30. I will remain here till 9, and everyone is welcome to come and discuss any issue they believe the mayor should hear about. With that being said, I will take my seat because we do have one public safety issue that we have to address before we discuss reorganization. John?
Yes, approximately 3 months ago, it was brought to our attention there were about a half a dozen trees on village property that needed to be removed. They were either dead or leaning towards the utilities, or both leaning towards the utilities and the road. Jeff Voss went out and got estimates from 3 contractors that we're fairly comfortable with. I emailed those quotes to you earlier today. And the DPW did remove a handful of smaller trees earlier this summer. I don't know exactly how many, but I think they removed 4 or 5 at least. But there are approximately 5 trees left that are too large for DPW to safely take down. And those quotes represent those tree removals. We're confident with the low bidder, I think $3,025, and would ask for your approval of that.
Sure. Well, being a public safety issue, we want to address it immediately. There's always concerns that in a major storm, a tree could come down and God forbid it would damage property or even worse, a person. So I would make a motion that we accept the bid of Wicks Arborists with respect to the quote they made to remove those remaining dead trees for the sum of $3,025. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
For the record, Elizabeth, it is unanimous.
Okay, thank you very much. And did you vote as well, Mayor?
I did.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. So now we move on to trustees' comments, and I'll open the floor to the deputy mayor first.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for those thorough comments in the opening. I too want to recognize former Mayor McFadden and thank him for his service over the many, many years. Other than that, the only thing I have to comment on is the reorg meeting. I fully support everything that I read. I made some suggestions and recommendations this morning. They appear to be in. And if anybody has any questions about those, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Trustee Scherer.
I guess my only question for you is, in your opening remarks, you suggested that you had suggested parties to sort of fill roles,
Yes,
and that we would have the opportunity to interview those people. So you're suggesting that we would not necessarily vote on individuals tonight, and we would vote at a later date? I was just trying to understand
sure.
what your process is going to
Well,
be.
as you are aware, we'll have a vacancy for the planning board shortly, based upon approval if this reorganization plan is approved. Going forward, at
I
any
see.
nomination I have to make from this
On a
day forward.
go forward
Yes.
basis after this reorganization.
That's correct.
That makes more sense to me.
Yes, going
Okay.
forward, you will have the opportunity to interview, as a board, we will call a meeting, and as a board, you will have the opportunity to interview any nominee I make to fill any vacant position within the village, whether it be an employee or a member of the three boards that we presently have.
I see. Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
And I just have one, I don't know if I misunderstood, but we have always had the opportunity to interview. Like if anyone was appointed, it's not that it's new.
Yes. Well,
We always had the opportunity.
I appreciate that, but as I said, I want to ensure, and through the language in this reorganization plan, it is provided that when a nomination is made, a meeting will be called, and that the Board of Trustees will, in executive session, of course, interview the nominee and reach their own conclusions about that nominee. We've had a sort of ad hoc situation, and not every nominee, for example, we have 4 nominees for a prospective planning board vacancy, and I know that not every trustee has spoken to every one of the nominees. I will.
Only one trustee that didn't speak to all.
Well, I would ensure through having a meeting where everyone is present that all the trustees have a chance to speak to the nominee and put any questions to them, and listen to the nominee's answers, and then reach their own conclusions for a subsequent vote. Anything else, Trustee Shaw?
Not on that point.
Okay, great. All right. Then we will move on to the issue of the appointments. We'll start for the purpose of discussion with the appointments to the board. The first appointment has already been done. It's the deputy mayor's position.
Right.
So the next one is the mayor's budget director. That is to be determined. And the reason for that is because Trustee Shaw, based upon her schedule, is unable to perform those duties, which she has performed admirably for several years. She will be out of the country, she's advised me. And at this particular point in time, no other trustee is presently available that I'm aware of to perform those duties. So I will have to search to make a determination what officer of the village, including myself, would be available to perform that function. And that is why it's to be determined in the future. So does anybody have any objection to that particular resolution at this point, albeit a temporary resolution?
No objection.
No objection,
no
no
objection.
objection.
No.
That being said, the vote on that, there's no formal vote, but there's no objection noted. Property tax boards, as I said in my statement.
Can
Yeah.
I just interrupt? Trustee Paul has
Oh, hello,
joined the meeting.
hello, Trustee Brooke. You're on mute. We cannot hear you, sir. Okay.
I had the wrong call number and it took me a little bit of time to find the right one. So I'm here, but I'll put
Okay.
you on mute since I'm.
Trustee Brooke, to let you catch up, we had a brief discussion about the mayor's budget director as the first line that we would have to vote on. And I
I
explained,
heard.
oh, you heard
I'm
that?
in agreement.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you, Trustee Brooke. The next group of appointments is the Board of Assessors and the Grievance Board. You may have missed my earlier statement at the opening where I said I would like to put to the board at the next regular meeting a discussion of changing the method of assessing here in the village. We would have a discussion on the agenda starting October 18th about whether we would replace the Board of Trustees with some other method for determining the individual property tax assessments. and that is why it's marked TBD or to be determined. Do you have any particular issue with that, Trustee Brooke? Oh, he's on mute. I think we lost him.
No, I don't have any objection to it, but,
Okay.
you know, let's, again, sorry, it's not easy driving.
I understand,
Okay.
sir. Okay, all right. Now we'll move on to the appointed boards. We've listed all the members who were present, including the presently on the board, including the chairs. The only change which will occur in the near future is if the board chooses to approve Bronwyn Roundtree as the Associate Village Justice, there will be a vacancy for which we've all been involved in interviewing the prospective candidates. Does anybody have any comments or objections about the proposed members and chair of those three boards?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm not quite, so they're all for June 30 in various years, right?
That is correct.
And that is before the reorg meeting presumably of all these years that they expire, or why? I'm just curious why they're June 30.
June 30 is the end of the year for the purpose of the village, and the reorganization meeting is the first week of July of that particular year. So their terms would end in June, and they would either be reappointed if they were expired, or they would be replaced the following month.
So you meaning the end of the year, fiscal year, or for the village?
For the village, right?
I don't think it's
Fiscal year is
fiscal.
May
It's
31st.
it's not a fiscal year.
Yeah, so it's not a fiscal year. I'm just trying to clarify
Right.
that.
It's the end of the month on the month that we hold elections.
So they would be appointed in July and their term
That's
would
correct.
expire in June,
Okay,
5 years later.
and so that was my first question. Then my second question is if you can explain the holdover term, because
Sure.
from what I understand, that's if people have surpassed their term limits or something. But Bronwyn, she is not technically a holdover. She's only been doing this for a couple of years, right?
Yes, well, it's not the person who's a holdover. It is actually the term that they are assigned to. So if someone were to be appointed for 5 years, were to resign after 3 years,
Right.
and then another individual took their place and that person served, their term, even though they've been on for 2 years, would technically expire at the end of the 5-year period. The term applies to the seat, not to the individual. I assume that you received council's letter. Did you receive council's letter today about their research as to the?
think
I did not.
Okay, there is a letter that the village attorney prepared, which sets forth his research regarding the terms of the individual board members. I would be happy to distribute that to everybody. And based upon that letter, I used the dates that we have for the individual members. They did some extensive research based upon the book that people use to swear in, as well as prior minutes. And that's how those particular dates were reached. And I will certainly share that with you tonight. I'll see that you get a copy, which would explain why they have these various dates.
Just so I understand the term holdover, so let's just take Dave Christensen as an example.
Sure.
So this would apply to the position, not the individual,
That's correct.
but the position would still have an expiration date,
Date,
presumably.
Yes, each position on each board has a 5-year expiration date. And if the individual is still sitting there after the 5-year expiration date, they are considered to be a holdover.
I
Unless
understand.
they are renewed by appointment or
But you should still have a date there, even
There-
if they are.
That's what I'm
holdover.
trying to
Yeah.
understand. So does that mean, for example, just to take the extreme, they're a holdover, so they never come off the board?
there are dates. The dates are in the letter that I received from
I see.
I received from Jared, which I will share with you.
Okay.
Every member has a date.
I see.
But for the purpose of this particular reorganization, I just listed them as holdovers because theoretically as holdovers,
They're serving their term is not expired, not expected to, and if it does expire, we'll see the date.
That is
Then
correct.
you'll appoint, or you'll propose someone new. We'll have the process that you discussed.
interview
We'll-
process.
interview process. I understand. Okay. But that memo from Jared that you mentioned lays all of that out,
All of it.
and the dates associated with these seats.
That is correct.
I understand. Okay.
And okay, you have it.
No, I think we'll just confirm, we have 1 year where 2 BAR seats expire, but we'll confirm that with Jared's letter.
Sure.
We have 2 people expiring on June 30th of 24. And normally they'd be staggered by 1 year, but we'll confirm to Jared's letter.
I know that the village attorney and his associates took a lot of time to work this out. It
Yes.
required a lot of investigation, using a lot of different sources to piece together what he has set forth in his memo.
Yeah, because I think that maybe there's a typo because Molly Gonzalez, it says it expires in 24, but she hasn't even been 1 year on the board, have you?
Yeah, I was appointed in February on the same date as Stephanie Rinza, who looks like she's
She's 27.
27.
From the attorney's letter, that particular seat, not you and your term and the amount of time you'll spend, but that particular seat you were placed on was already 4 years into the term and expires at the end of the 5th year, which would be next year. Do you understand? It's not the holdover and the expiration applies to the seat, not to the individual sitting on the seat. And then the individual gets an opportunity for a renewed 5 years.
So maybe we should have 2 columns there just explaining that the seat expires this date and whenever that person was appointed. I don't know, just to clarify, maybe going forward, we wouldn't have to have the attorneys figure all that out
Well,
if we lay it out.
what we'll do from this point forward is we will have a true record of each of the 5 seats.
Right. So there's
Their
no more
terms, so there's no more
discussion.
discussion and confusion because I understand your point, trustees and Ms. Gonzalez. So we will make every effort to straighten this out. I'll speak to Jared, the village attorney, and I will again circulate the letter that I received this morning.
Great.
Setting forth the terms. So if that's acceptable, we can move on.
Yeah, just one quick question then.
Sure.
So you have, this says, we've had the discussion of the member that's been on for 17 years, who is currently a holdover in the planning board. That's not going to be a holdover for the whole next year.
Mm.
No, we're still planning to maybe appoint someone else.
Well,
This,
I have spoken to Chair Hanson, and she's indicated to me that she's at this particular point certainly not going to serve out an entire term. So we will look into replacing the chair at some point in the relatively near future. It was my opinion after speaking with the village attorney that the effort to remove her prior to my election was not fully completed appropriately according to law, and therefore she remains chair. There was not a full and complete removal. Right. Thank you, Mayor. Right. Okay. Anything else on the boards or the dates? Okay. Appointments to the village committees, chairs and liaisons. Any discussion, trustees?
yes, I
Okay.
personally would like to resign from the cell communications. I've been
Okay.
doing it for 3 years. We've gotten nowhere. And I'll tell you that Matthew Tenere was the best addition we had to that board. You should appoint someone who might, well, have more expertise than I do, but I just haven't seen it go anywhere and it takes a little time for
And
that.
I'm sorry, and just so I understand, there is a committee that was working with you. You said Matt's on it,
Matthew was on it.
and who else?
Was it Maureen Cohen?
Maureen Cohen,
Right.
and then it was
Right.
Paula
People next to
Tachi,
the
and
cell
then there
tower.
was, yeah, and I forget who else was on it at some point. That we started with, the club had needed some, and the police department, but we resolved the police department's issues with the Wi-Fi. And this was not going to be helpful for
It was,
the club, so,
yeah, it was Maureen Cohen, Paula Tachi. We have a communications advisor whose name now escapes me,
Uh,
Walter.
and myself. Yeah, Walter.
Mhm.
Well, I campaigned on that issue, so I'll take over that slot if that's
Yeah,
okay
'cause
okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay.
But just so you know, that Matthew was very, very good. you
In
know.
terms of the chair, yeah, I understand. I'll discuss it with Matt. Matt has the chair of the WeWa.
Right.
Okay, and that's quite a responsibility, especially in the warmer weather. So we'll talk about that.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
I
Any
think
other?
He might have suggestions too.
Yeah,
you know.
right. Any other comments on the appointments village committees?
Yeah, I just think there might be a typo where it says Tinka Shaw for the sewer and sewer rates. It should be maybe water and sewer rates.
Okay. All right, we'll make that note. Anything else from anybody?
Yes,
Okay.
I was disappointed to see that the most social person in Tuxedo Park is no longer part of the welcome committee. Bryna, she was on the Friday list, but she's no longer
Mhm.
on the welcome committee.
Yeah, no, she's still on the welcome committee. I've been in communication with her. She's in Europe, and I advised her that I was picking Erin Spinowitz as a new chair, and I asked Bryna to remain on the committee, and she graciously agreed. She will continue to be active on the committee.
Oh, good. I was just confused because you had both of their names.
Yeah,
listed on the
that was
Friday's list. and-
that was changed. That was an error.
Aaron.
It was an error in typing, but Bryna was listed as the chair, but in fact, I had advised her that and asked her to remain on the committee as a member, and she's agreed. Any other comments?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't see the DPW, village office employees, building department, police department reporting to anyone on the board.
That would go to the issue of liaisons. My philosophy about the reporting of the various village departments is that they should be reporting to the board as a whole. That liaisons, whether the liaisons are to the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, or the bar, or the police department, or DPW, is not the way I'd like to see this administration run. For transparency, I would like people, whoever is the chair of one of the boards, to come before all of us and to describe for us whatever issues they need to describe and ask for whatever help they need to ask, rather than going through the conduit of one individual. I'd like it to be done in the open. I'd like it to be done publicly. I'd like it to be done on the record. And that's why I've removed the liaison positions to the various boards and to the various departments. It's my manner and method of governing is to promote openness and transparency, and to do everything in public. And I believe that the system I've instituted, to have the chair or the chief or or Jeff come before us and tell us what the problem is, and we're all sitting here and we can put our heads together and try to reach a resolution in public, is the best method to utilize, rather than through one of the individual trustees.
Well, couldn't you just have it then, just so it's not off that they're not reporting to anyone? Because right now, it's just, you're saying it, but it's not on the reorg who they report to. And instead just say, the Board of Trustees is who they report to.
Absolutely. I'll
So
put
I
that
would-
on the record, that all of the chairs of the three boards, as well as the department heads of the various departments, will report directly to the Board of Trustees as an assembled unit.
Mhm.
And that will be my direction.
Can you clarify what you mean by report? Because you supervise them, and I don't want to get into that kind of business.
Well, if there are any issues they wish to discuss with any problems that come up, which would have ordinarily gone through the liaisons in prior years, will now come directly to the board. Obviously, yes, I supervise them as the mayor. I'm the chief executive. But if there was anything that they would have talked about with the liaisons, any problems that they had, they can now bring them directly to the Board of Trustees. Is that satisfactory to you?
I mean, you should be, obviously you'd be aware of whatever these issues are.
Right.
So
I will certainly advise the board of any issues that come to me that I believe the board should be aware of.
I mean, I would just say, using your earlier example of, this body being representative of the US Senate and how you do appointments. You know, the Secretary of Defense isn't going to go to the Senate Armed Services Committee with the problem that the president is already aware of and tracking and had multiple conversations.
That
with,
is true.
right. So that's why good example. You know, you can bring when you need the board to weigh in on issues that you've identified with your
That you
team.
want our input
Then of
on.
course we
Right.
would be doing that. But I don't think they're going to come to an open meeting with things that you haven't already pushed, like, hey, you need to bring this up to the board, and then you give us a heads up, or they give us a heads up what's
Yeah.
coming on.
Okay, I think you gave a perfect example that the chief executive is responsible for the management of the village and the employees and the boards. However, again, my point is, I want the trustees to be involved in the decision-making process. That is the key. And as we work through this, and, you know, I'll concede, it's been 2 weeks. And, sometimes you try something and it may not work. I just have a philosophy, and I will do everything I can to promote that philosophy. And I would hope that as trustees, you would want to be informed of those issues that we would need to discuss, and those issues that face the village, rather than being the imperial mayor. There's a theory of the strong and imperial executive. And while I understand that my executive responsibilities do extend beyond the responsibilities of trustees, that I want you guys to be involved in the decision-making
So
process.
can I just clarify one thing based on what you just said? I agree 100%. It's better to hear the superintendent of DPW or the chief of police explain the issue to the board as opposed to you relaying their issue for us, so that we can ask them questions.
That is
We can get clarification.
That
So
is correct.
in that situation, yes, I totally support that philosophy. I
Okay.
agree with it.
All right.
Mayor, I also might like to add that in some cases, the supervisors would prefer confidentiality. It may not be so open to saying something in meeting, but directly to executive session.
We will deal, Mayor, we will deal with those issues as they come forward. If it's a particular concern to the supervisor, a personnel issue, for example, that is not appropriately discussed in public, that's what executive sessions are for. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anything else on appointments, village committees, chairs, and trustee liaisons?
On this one back, for Gardner Hempel as fire commissioner,
Yes.
can we just put a date in there? Because
Are we
instead
still
of
on
the year
9, or are we
2020.
moved
No,
forward?
I think we're still on 9, trustee
okay.
Shaw.
I think we're still
We
on
haven't
9.
got, any more comments on appointments, village committees, chairs, and trustee liaisons?
None for me.
None for me.
Trustee Shaw?
No, last year we had under this area, I think we had also the webmaster or something. I don't see that.
Yeah, that's one other thing I should publicly make a plea for. Is there anybody who would be interested in becoming the village webmaster? Any experiences? I see Mayor McFadden is raising his hand.
I mean, he was good.
Yeah,
He was absolutely. Anyone else out there who'd like to talk to me about being the webmaster? I would love to speak to you, and feel free to contact me at Village Hall. So,
I'll just add a plug. If you're thinking of, if you have maybe a college age child, or even high school maybe, is looking into communications, this is something that would look nice on the resume.
okay. And anything else, Trustee Shaw?
No, not on
Not
that
in this
section.
category. Okay.
Yeah.
Next, we move to other appointments. And these other appointments concern town issues, St. Mary's, the Tuxedo Club, the Tuxedo Park School, the Village Fire Inspector, TBD. Gardner Hempel is the Fire Commissioner, and the Lake Wardens. Any comments on those nominations at this point?
The TBDs. Why?
Well, do we need a fire inspector? I don't know that.
Typically, I've served as doing some of the inspections. There's not many during the course of the year.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
don't
looked
know.
And it does fall safely within the building inspector
Yeah, I mean, it's a
responsibilities.
pretty important job that requires training, is my understanding. So I would hope, so, yeah, I think the building inspector, that's who does it for the
So you're
Town.
suggesting it should be John,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we can certainly,
Unless John objects. I mean, I don't want to.
No, I don't have any objection, and I think the mayor just wasn't aware of it when.
Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
so I will nominate John Ledwith to be the fire inspector. Other comments, any Deputy Mayor Casker on this section?
No.
Trustee Scherer?
I mean, again, the lake warden for the Weewat Lake, that's just, you're gonna
Well-
just figure that out, I guess.
Let me say that I've had conversations with Mr. Turner and Mr. Libby about their duties, and I'm
Right.
still being informed regarding the nature and extent of those duties. Greg Libby has been doing it for 20 years, he told me.
Wow.
So he's the most, he is the historian with respect to the duties of the lake warden. And I would be happy to share with you anything I learn as to what he's been doing with respect to Tuxedo Lake in the last 20 years. Jedediah has apparently been the lake warden of Pond 3 for at least 1 year, and he expressed surprise when I told him that. So I think we'll have to. I directed him to Greg so that Greg could tell him what his duties were.
Right, okay.
And I'm in conversations with someone who may assume the duty of lake warden and lake warden in for the Weewha, and I will report back to you on that.
Okay.
But I have to say that my knowledge of what the lake warden's duties are will have to await my conversation with Greg Libby.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Okay. Anything else, folks?
Just the Gardner Hempel.
Yeah.
Since we know it expires in 26, he was nominated last year for 4 years
Yes.
on July 20th. Can we just put a date when it expires in 26 so that it's clear for
Sure,
everybody?
certainly. So
If you want to keep it consistent for June 30 or like with the other
June
ones?
30 of 2026 is fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out, Trustee Shaw. Okay, anything else on that category?
No.
All right, village employees and appointments. You'll notice a change for our village clerk, 2 years rather than 1 year. I've been advised that her term is supposed to mirror the mayor's term.
Okay.
And that's why it's 2 years. She serves at the mayor's pleasure, but for the entire term of the mayor. So it's through June 30th of 2025. Does anybody have any issue with that? No, okay. Any other questions about any of the other employees and their status?
I think we need to add Desiree Hickey, who does the minutes and stuff for the various boards. I think we should probably add her.
Does she still do that?
Yep.
Yeah,
we
she
have
still,
her
she
on.
does that remotely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So Desiree would be added to the village office.
Yeah, because she
Yep.
serves the board.
Yep, okay, yep. So we will add Desiree Hickey as a deputy clerk.
We don't want recording secretary. is
Okay.
probably appropriate.
Fine. Recording secretary.
Do we just want to move village fire inspector down to John Ludwig?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Sure, sure.
Good suggestion, yeah.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
So
Excuse me.
Desiree,
Can I ask a question? Sorry to interrupt. But Desiree, I think being part-time, would she follow the same pattern as the part-time police officers and be at will?
yeah, that would be correct. Thank you, Elizabeth. The police department, anybody have any comments or suggestions with respect to the 3 union officers, and then the rest of the officers are at will or part-time?
No.
Okay, the DPW superintendent and the 5 union employees? Any comment on that?
No comment.
Okay,
No.
village court, let me explain what I did with respect to the village court. I've always believed that the village justice or justices should be resident in the community where they serve. As you probably know, I ran for village justice in June 2017 against Judge Hassan, and I was roundly beaten. And despite that, here I am given the opportunity to appoint an associate village justice who is a member of the community. And I've circulated Bronwyn's resume to the trustees. You all had a chance to interview her, I believe. And I believe she's highly qualified to serve in the role of Associate Village Justice as a resident of Tuxedo Park, and to serve with Judge Hassan, who of course is elected and will dictate what manner and method she provides judicial services depending upon his schedule. That's really up to him. Does anybody have any questions about the village court?
I don't.
None for me.
Okay, all right, fine, thank you. Now we'll move on to the professionals. Does anybody have any issues with any of the professionals who were designated? I believe there are certain changes. Obviously, we all know about the village attorney. It's changed from to Harris Beach. And then there are the attorneys for the various boards. Does anybody have any questions or comments about any of the village professionals?
I think we should probably strike Schnabel Engineering. They were certainly not helpful, and when we were trying to resolve the Weewa Dam, we have to do some repairs, and they basically said, not my problem.
Okay. Is there any-
Would you agree with that, John, that
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
not? So we might want to consider some other firm, or do we even need a village engineer? Or in addition to Weston and Sampson's special projects, or?
I think similar to the attorneys, we should always have at least 2 or 3 engineers available just to keep everybody fair and get good pricing. So we, not that we would go to Schnabel,
Right.
but we should maybe come up with another firm that
Maybe we
can bounce things
consider
off
that
of.
other firm that we interviewed. Remember?
There was a firm that we interviewed.
I forget their name.
I do forget their names. Nothing negative, but just a brief, when we first met them, they seemed eager to help. They were promising us several things. And then we met with them a month or so later, and they really didn't impress us. They really didn't have anything that they found that we should be doing that we're not already aware of. So we didn't feel it was really prudent to make any change at that time. But we can bring them up, and if we have projects in the future, we could definitely get their input, send them plans, get pricing, just to keep all the other engineers in line.
Let me ask you this, John. Do we have any sort of contractual agreement with Schnabel Engineering, or is it essentially as needed?
As needed.
Okay, all right.
I think what we've done is if we have a project, we would ask them for a proposal just for that specific project.
And now, does Michael Quinn still work for them, or he's at a new firm?
It is a different firm. I'd have to look.
So
it up.
maybe we can keep Schnabel Engineering,
Well, and
just strike Michael Quinn from the list.
I mean, you didn't say it, but I think your point is we're not obligated. This is not obligating us to using them.
That is correct.
Right.
Does anybody have a problem with having them designated as village engineers, or should we put TBD in this category?
I think if,
I'm actually okay as long as we strike the Michael Quinn from there, because he's no longer there, and
Okay,
then we don't have to go through.
is the dam the only issue we've had with them?
Yes, but that's
We
the
use-
only,
That's the only thing we use them for?
that's the only thing we used them for was the Weewa Dam. So
okay. Any other concerns about the village professionals who appear on this list?
No.
Trustee Shaw?
No,
Okay. All right, so we now move beyond the specific appointments to the official undertakings, the official newspaper, the designation of depositories, the dates for the meetings, the village election. Does anybody have any comments or suggestions or objections to those particular categories?
I just have on number 13. I'm a
Yeah, I
little
just-
confused about that.
Number 13.
Oh, I'm
Let's
sorry.
discuss that.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. The Board of Trustees approves that the appointed board member holdover appointments are exempt from the term limits of the local law. Well, the local law of 2006 sets the term limits of 5 years to the appointed boards, and they're entitled to renewal of 1 5-year term, so for a total of 10 years. We have various members who are serving for a period longer than that, And for the purpose of this reorganization, they would be permitted to continue to serve until they were replaced as an exemption from the maximum 10 years that would ordinarily be permitted under local law 3 of 2006. Any comments on that?
So this is basically exempting all parties or all individuals that have been identified as holdovers from term limits. People that are serving today would be exempt.
Well, when you say holdovers, the answer is no, because there are people who are holding over who served personally less than 10 years. And they're holdovers because their positions have expired.
Right.
And those people would not be subject to.
So this was one person.
Yes.
This is Joanne Hanson, who served 17 years.
That is correct.
Okay.
She technically has served longer than would be permissible under this local law.
Okay. And if we were, for whatever reason, not to approve the number 13 tonight, would that mean that she would not be allowed to continue serving in that capacity?
I would see.
Mayor, this is Jared.
Yes.
May I just
Sure.
interject for a moment?
Yes, attorney.
So holdovers are not subject to term limits because it would be as if they'd be punished for volunteering to continue on as a holdover. Right. So it's only if they were appointed to a term would that term count against the term limits. Does that make sense?
Very confusing.
So a holdover, should they continue in office, that doesn't count as a new term. It's not as they finish their term, they'll continue on, but they haven't been appointed to a new term. They're just serving in a voluntary capacity until there's an appointment made to fill that vacancy.
So I think you're answering my question. The answer to my question is no. Meaning, let's just be specific. Joanne Hanson, if we were not to approve this 13 tonight, Joanne Hanson could continue to serve in her role.
That's right.
Okay. So I don't see any purpose in 13, I guess
I would agree.
is my point.
Well, let me ask the village attorney. You have the agenda in front of you.
I do.
What's your considered opinion as to paragraph 13?
I think it's superfluous. I think it's not necessary.
Then we shall strike it. Thank you. Moving on, I read the other 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Any comments on those?
I think Provident Bank and M&T Bank are number 16. They're not our official depositories, aren't they? Where we have our, what do you call bonds and things or something? Isn't that? I don't think we do.
Well, they're just listed. Oh, I see.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to clarify that because it's.
Are they alternative depositories?
I don't think so. I think it's just for the bonds and things. I think that's where we pay out. I'm pretty sure. Elizabeth?
Yes, I'm sorry. What was the question?
So in number 16, where it has banks, Provident Bank and M&T Bank, isn't that where we, where the
Yes.
bonds and things are?
Yes, some of our payments go there, exactly.
Right, so it shouldn't be called official depositories. I don't know what you call it, but
Well,
Yeah. I was a little confused by that too, because the only bank that I actually work with in terms of making deposits is Chase Bank. That's where our deposits are. And these other banks are where I send payments, but that's what had, it seems like that's what we had always done. So it is a continuation of what we had always done.
so maybe Jared, you can opine on that, whether we put it under official depositories or not.
What it does, trustee, is it allows the village some flexibility if they were to choose another one of these banks to hold deposits of the village. You don't necessarily need to have any deposits of those banks.
yeah, I think the way I look at it is it gives us optionality without committing us. So I personally would just leave it.
So then do it like it was last year, because last year it's had a separate line also for official depositories, 1 year also for Provident Bank.
Oh, just separate line items? or-
Well, not line item, but I'll show you what it looked like last year. So maybe it just was a little typo or something. See, they listed it like this last year. So you have
But
Provident
it's
Bank.
this, I think that
Just
gets you to the
separate.
same thing though, right?
Right.
Yeah. But
I don't know.
Shall we leave it?
I'm fine leaving it.
Okay, all right. Any other comments on those sections that I just
No.
recited?
Not for me.
Okay. On holidays, I'd like, Elizabeth, would you be able to specify on which of those holidays the village hall is closed so that it's clear when village hall will not be operational?
Okay, do you want me to add that as a comment there? Like
It's,
Labor Day, Village Hall closed? I'm not sure.
yeah,
Or just an asterisk with a.
yeah, just some
Okay,
indication,
that-
you know, I
That's a
know,
good idea. I like
Thank
that. I'll
you.
put the asterisk and at the bottom I'll put Village Hall closed. And just for the record, in case you're wondering, we have those other holidays because occasionally they overlap a board meeting. And these are very important holidays. And so we'll accommodate those holidays by moving the board meeting in recognition of them. And I don't know, I just think it makes it a little bit more clear because you see the
Okay.
holidays. Yeah.
for the
So-
purpose of the record and the public, do you have the agenda in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Would you just please recite those holidays on this list on which Village Hall is closed? Thank you.
Sure. Labor Day, Columbus Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Day, President's Day, Good Friday, Memorial Day, Juneteenth, and Independence Day.
Okay, how about the day after Thanksgiving?
Yes, that is also off. We are also, to be honest, I hate to say this, but I've always been a tiny bit confused about that. Because I think I'm just a little, it just seems like Village Hall is definitely closed on the day after Thanksgiving. Yes.
Okay,
This is
all right.
holiday, but not this.
All right. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Okay. Um,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Village,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
but should I say then for Thanksgiving, should I say Thursday and Friday?
yes, please.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Any questions about the calendar based upon what Elizabeth had to say?
No.
No.
Okay, thanks. 18, village election and voting hours. So this was quite a year. The third Tuesday in June is designated as the election day. I may be putting together a proposal to stagger the terms of trustees so that we might only have elections every odd year, which means we'd only have to worry about it every 2 years. I will make that proposal in the near future, and that has to go to a public referenda. The public has to agree that we will change the terms of the trustees. The mayor would still be running every 2 years, but the trustees would get 4-year terms. Next year, for example, the trustees who ran next year would get 3-year terms so that we could stagger them to 27. And then we would have elections every odd year, 25, 27, 29. Mayor would run in every election, and 2 trustees would run every 4 years. In other words, we wouldn't have to go through this process every year. We'll put that to the public sometime in the near future. Now we can move on to the most exciting part, which is the rules of procedure. And we have somewhat of an expert here. Deputy Mayor Casker, do you have any comments on the rules of procedure that are written?
I like them, I guess. And you want me to go into some of the changes we made?
Sure.
Okay. So let's see, where's our general? Obviously the Village Code of New York State says that the mayor presides over the Board of Trustees meetings and in the mayor's absence, the deputy mayor presides. But if neither the mayor nor the deputy are present, then the three remaining trustees will appoint somebody to preside. Pretty simple stuff. But the point is, we all have equal votes. Not one person, I believe, should have the power to veto a meeting. And therefore, if three trustees come together to conduct the village business, they can conduct the village business. The previous rules required the mayor or deputy mayor to be present. I don't think we changed anything on the regular meeting schedules.
Nope.
But the one thing I don't think, maybe we're doing it for discussion, is the procedure for postponing or canceling a village meeting. Elizabeth, or Mayor, was that added at all? And I didn't see it yet. I think I wrote an email and just asked that we discuss it. And Elizabeth, you opine that, that's something that is addressed in, I think, NICOM.
Yeah,
It should be
NICOM did say that it should be addressed. They recommended it should be addressed in here.
All right, so maybe that's something we talk about when we get through this.
Okay.
Special meetings, of the Board of Trustees. So anything that's not a regular meeting is a special meeting, basically. The mayor can call a special meeting, or if two trustees decide to call a special meeting, they can do that. Everybody has to be noticed in accordance with the rules. We have to have at least 24 hours in advance unless it's an emergency. I don't think we'd made any changes to quorum or executive session. Remote attendance. So I assume this means if none of us are here and we're all remote like we were during COVID, we would follow whatever the executive orders are put up by the governor of the state. Otherwise, we have a law that allows people to chime in as long as there's a quorum here. So it doesn't really need to be addressed here. It's a matter of law. Public hearings, there was no change. Agendas. I don't know if we changed anything in agendas. Does anybody?
No,
anybody
no,
notice
I don't
anything?
think so.
What was that, Elizabeth?
I don't think there were any changes to
Okay.
that.
I don't think there were any changes to voting. It's pretty cut and dry. No changes to minutes, as my understanding. And then and no changes to order of business. Mayor, do you want to talk about guidelines for public comment?
Sure. We have changed the public comment, as I mentioned at our meeting on September 20th. Traditionally, it was public comment for 2 minutes, limited to agenda items only. And I've always believed that any member of the public that has taken the time to come to a meeting, either in person or Zoom, appeared by Zoom, should not be limited to the agenda items. I think public comment is very important on any issue that any member of the public thinks is relevant to the village and its business. So I've instituted a public comment at the beginning of the regular meetings and at the end of the regular meetings. The beginning so that you can make your statement, and if you don't want to stick around, you can go home or get back to your dinner. And at the end of the meeting, so that you can comment on whatever you like, including what took place at the meeting. I've also extended the time period from 2 minutes to 3 minutes, which I think is an adequate amount of time. The only rule that I put into place is that the comments, whatever they may be, about whatever subject you wish to discuss, be conducted in a civil manner without personal attacks or ad hominem attacks on members of the board or other residents in the community or on anybody else. So with that being said, we'll have a public comment period, this being a rather unusual organizational meeting at the end of this meeting, so you can all tell us how well we did or how well I did, or talk about whatever suits you. And that will be the change. So feel free when we have a general meeting on October 18th or anytime thereafter to bring whatever concerns you may have to the Board of Trustees, and we will listen carefully to what you have to say.
One thing I wouldn't mind pointing out is number 16. There's no change to this, but I just want remind the trustees and the public, especially if they have a great idea. The foregoing procedures may be amended from time to time at the request of the mayor or trustee if approved by the majority of the board. So just because we set these procedures here tonight doesn't mean we're stuck with them.
Right.
We can learn from whatever happens and make adjustments.
And also, Chris,
Fiscal year, we've talked about that. Number 19 is an ad. It's something this board had talked about back in June and all agreed, and the mayor talked about it at his opening remarks. It says mayor appointments requiring board approval. So this is for when the law requires the board to approve the mayor's appointments. When the code requires board approval for appointments made by the mayor, the board will schedule a meeting to provide the opportunity to interview the candidate. Try to make it very succinct, but I think we all understand the intent.
Sure.
And then for discussion, I just penciled in a item number 20 here. Board meetings can be rescheduled with 3 members of the board agreeing. Obviously, the mayor is going to make the recommendation. It's 2 of us need to say, yep, we agree.
I mean, anyone can make the recommendation, right?
Exactly.
Right.
He's
So
going to know what's going on and why there should be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great suggestion.
Sure. I certainly have no problem with that. I wouldn't take unilateral action in absence of an emergency in any event. It'd have to be pretty serious emergency. Any comments on anything Deputy Mayor Casker just said?
No.
Any additions, deletions? Okay. There is a typo in the next section, which is the next organizational meeting. I've got something that says the 2024 organizational meeting is scheduled for 2023. So that's a typo?
Sorry about that.
That's okay, Elizabeth. It's scheduled for July 17th, 2024. Anybody have an issue with that particular date next year?
Nope.
Okay. Procurement policy and procedure. Renew for 1 year the procurement policy for the Village of Tuxedo was amended and adopted by the Board of Trustees on April 17th, 2019. Does anybody have any comments about the procurement policy or have any proposed changes?
So I don't have any proposed changes, but I know this is something that we asked Jared to take a look at 2 months ago, I think, or maybe last month. Just to review all policies and procedures. So that is ongoing, and he may come back with something that we decide we want to change down the road.
Okay, so the village attorney will get back to us with any recommendations with respect to the procurement policy. Any other comments on procurement policy and procedure, trustees?
Nope.
Okay. Other village policies, sexual harassment training must be taken by all board members and employees. Have we had sexual harassment training?
A number of years ago, the staff at the time had some training.
Okay.
But it's probably in excess of 5 years.
All right, we're gonna have to schedule, I guess, through whatever state agency provides this particular instruction, sexual harassment training for all board members and employees. We have a sexual harassment policy on file and a social media policy on file. Anybody ever read them or have any comments about them? I haven't gotten to them yet.
No comments, but I just want to make a comment about sexual harassment training. There's a link on the New York State's website, in New York City. Sexual harassment training is somewhat interactive and it meets the requirement for New York State, and it's free, and it produces a certificate at the end.
Mind if you had.
I will send it to you.
I'm sure there's.
I have.
Can you send it to me as well, Chris?
I will, yep.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody comments on the policy? If they haven't, if they've read it, I admit I have not yet gotten to that file.
Nope.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time. It's
Maybe.
time for public comment, and we will start with anyone in the room who wishes to speak publicly. Again, you have 3 minutes to speak on any topic you want, and all I ask is that you do not include any personal attacks or ad hominem attacks. Anybody wish to speak from the room? Yes, Chair Ryan Lynch of the bar. Please stand up at the podium and state your name for the record.
Ryan Lynch.
Okay.
Thank you for taking the question. I just wanted to have clarification on appointed members of the architecture review bar specifically. So I would just like clarification on how dates were chosen for individuals assigned on the same day, specifically Molly and Stephanie. Also, I'd like to answer that question.
Okay. Jared, would you be able to answer that question because you prepared the memo that assigned those dates?
So the reason is these individuals were appointed to fill terms that were, I guess, at one point holdover terms. So it depends on which slot they were appointed to. We're trying to clarify and confirm, excuse me, I'm drawing Molly's term end date as well as another member of the BAR. So we'll get back to the board and to you, Ryan, about that.
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you. I also want to thank you for adding in the public comment section that things need to be a civil discourse. Members of the bar that I serve on have unfortunately dealt with personal attacks, and it can be challenging to those who are volunteering their time here. I would also like to ask for a commitment from you that the dates I have expiring here, specifically Molly next year, Christopher Gow the following, Rob Quilkin that expired during your term, that you would offer the position to them first as a first right of refusal. All of them have served a very long time and are doing their job quite well.
Thank you for your kind words with respect to your members. I appreciate the loyalty you have to them. What I can say in response to that is that the mayor has the power to make appointments, and those appointments are made based upon the members' performance during the course of their term. And as each appointment comes up, I will make a determination in discussion with the trustees, and I will make a recommendation for approval of the trustees. It could be a reappointment or it could be something different. But I think it is inappropriate for me to promise you as the chair that I will reappoint your members when their terms expire. It isn't just not something that
Not to reappoint them, but to give them the first consideration. And I would hope that you would base that on the performance.
If they want to renew and they want their position back, they will certainly be considered together with anybody else. And the experience they've obtained on the board and the way they served on the board will certainly be foremost in my mind in making a decision about whether a reappointment is warranted. Thank you, Chair Lynch. Thank you. Anybody else in the room want to make any comments? Okay. One hand raised. Ms. Hempel, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I actually just have one question. I believe the village is investing the cash from tax payments with New York Class. So I'm wondering whether this asset manager, it's not a bank, should be included in the list of, in the organization, reorg document.
Yeah, good point. Back where the bank.
Very good question. I will turn to our financial expert and see if he has an answer for us on that.
Oh, for me?
Oh, yeah, for you. Should that be included in our reorganization plan? Identified as a recipient of village funds?
Again, I think the answer is why not? It doesn't obligate us to place our money with them, but it creates optionality. So Tia, and I think it's an excellent suggestion.
Yes, I mean, we can have a second TBD just to make sure that we have the optionality.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will add New York Class, which is not a bank.
No, it's not.
But it's an investment fund.
I would call it an investment vehicle.
Okay, we will add New York Class as an investment vehicle for under designation of depositories. Does that satisfy you, Chu-Yen?
I think that sounds wonderful.
Thank you. All right, we will amend the reorganization plan to include that. Does anybody else in the public wish to speak? Somebody to tell us we've done a great job tonight? No? Somebody tell us I'm doing a terrible job. Oh, okay, all right. Well then, the public comment period is closed. And now the trustees have a chance to, for the second time, to speak their minds. Deputy Mayor Kasker, anything you'd like to add to your previous comments?
Nothing I'd like to add. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Trustee Scherer, anything you'd like to add at this point?
No, thank you.
Okay. Trustee Shaw?
No, I think I said enough.
Okay, that's great. So now we can move on to resolutions. And it looks like the first resolution is something called advance approval of claims. So I'm going to read this resolution and I'm going to ask for a second. on this resolution. And then, well, we have quite a few resolutions, so I will at least identify what they are. Advanced approval of claims. Pursuant to Village Law, Section 55246, the Board of Trustees may by resolution authorize claims for public utility services, postage, freight, and express charges to be paid in advance of audit, including the mayor having authority to expedite appropriations up to $5,000 with oral or written approval by a majority of the Board of Trustees, and an appropriate resolution authorizing advance payment of claims as follows. Does anybody have a problem with the wording of the advance approval of claims or any questions about it?
No.
Okay. Mileage allowance. Pursuant to Village Law 5-427, the actual and necessary expenses the officers and employees incur in performing their official duties are a village charge. However, in lieu of auditing and allowing a claim for actual and necessary expenses for travel, the Board of Trustees may determine by resolution to pay a reasonable mileage allowance for use of personal motor vehicles in performing official duties. An appropriate resolution authorizing mileage allowance is as follows. Anybody have a problem? And they do designate the federal 2023-24 mileage rate within this resolution. Any issue? Anybody? Okay, we'll move on. Attendance at schools and conferences. Pursuant to the General Municipal Law, Section 77B, municipal officials and employees may attend schools, conferences, and seminars conducted for the benefit of local government. However, attendance is not authorized, nor can reimbursement be applied for unless the Board of Trustees approves the attendance in advance. Such attendance includes, but is not limited to, NICOM's annual meeting and training school, NICOM's fall training school, NICOM's public works training school, and any New York State sponsored training classes. Appropriate resolution authorizing attendance is as follows. Anybody have any problem with authorizing our employees to attend school should they request the same? And we agree to provide financing for that.
No issues.
Okay, great. Designating depositories. Well, the pursuant to village law, the Board of Trustees must designate by resolution banks or trust companies in which the treasurer, clerk, receiver, or town receiver are designated and appointed as village receiver may deposit village monies received by them. We have to amend this resolution to include New York Class. Would everyone agree to that amendment?
Because I don't think they were a bank or a trust company.
They are?
I don't.
No,
believe
they are.
that
So
they
we'll
are.
have to change that to say a New York State Controller approved investment fund. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay, so we'll add that New York State Controller approved investment fund, and New York Class will be named as the specific fund. Is
Right.
everyone in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone have any other problem with that resolution?
No.
Okay, so we're reaching the end of this session. We have a master resolution. This is called the approval of the 2023 organizational agenda. I move, whereas the Board of Trustees have reviewed this agenda in detail and made the aforesaid changes that were previously described, that this resolution is effective immediately. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approves items 1 through 25 on this organizational agenda. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Deputy Mayor Casker. All in favor, including
Aye.
Trustee Brooke. Aye. Is Trustee Brooke with us?
No.
He
No.
was a second ago.
Trustee Brooke
No, he's
No,
gone.
is gone. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine, I don't think.
So we have all trustees and the mayor, excluding Trustee Brooke, vote aye. Trustee Brooke, due to technical issues, is not a vote. That concludes our substantive resolution and discussion. And now I move that the Board of Trustees adjourn for the evening. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor and present say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous again, Elizabeth, with Trustee Brooke not voting for technical reasons.
And the second came from Christopher Casker. I just want to make sure.
Yes, yes. Second from Deputy Mayor Casker. Thank you all very much for coming. I hope it was an educational experience. And to those of you on Zoom, we look forward to seeing you on October 18th for the regular board meeting. It should be an interesting meeting, and if anybody on Zoom wishes to offer their services as website manager or to volunteer for any of the committees or come to see me on Thursday nights, please do. Thank you.
Thank you.